And chain 2, which we're technically counting as a cluster. And we're going to do one cluster in the next 3 stitches this time. So there's one we slip stitched into, so there's our first stitch. In that first one we do a cluster. We do one cluster in the next one. Then we do one cluster in the next one. So one cluster in the next 3, like so. And then you can see your previous increases, your previous 2 clusters, and in the next stitch we do 2 clusters. That's right. So there's one. More yarn. Go back into the same stitch and do another one. Okay. So then what we want to do is one cluster in the next 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4 of just one cluster in the next 4. So we do one cluster in the next stitch, one cluster in the next stitch, one cluster in the next stitch, and one cluster in the next stitch. And then we're back to doing 2 clusters in the next stitch. So we do 2 clusters in the next stitch. There's one, and go back into the same stitch and do another one. Okay. So you always do one less at the beginning because you're counting your chain 2 technically as a cluster. So you've got your 1, 2, 3, 4, then your 2 clusters. So you do one cluster in the next 4, then your 2 cluster, and just repeat that round, doing one cluster in the next 4, 1 cluster, 1 cluster, 1 cluster, 1 cluster, then 2 clusters, then same again, 1 cluster, 1 cluster, 1 cluster, 1 cluster, 2 clusters, then 1, 1, 1, 1, 2 clusters, 1, 1, 1, 1, then the last one, 2 clusters. Okay, so you should end up with a stitch count of 36. Okay, so one cluster in the next 4. Okay, so just going up to the last 5, so we do one cluster in the next 4. Three. And 4, which should leave us with 1 stitch, and then that last stitch we do our 2 clusters, that last one. So there's 1, small yarn, and same stitch, do another cluster. Then we just slip stitch in the top of our 2 chain. There's our first chain, there's our second. Don't confuse it with the first stitch. And there we go. Let's bring that through the loop and our hook to slip stitch. So there we go. So let's just check we've got 36 stitches. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 35 and 36 are chain 2. Yay! So moving on to round 7, which is our last increase round, and exactly the same, similar method. We're going to chain 2, which we're counting as a stitch, as a cluster, and last time we did 1 cluster in the next 3, so this time we're going to do 1 cluster in the next 4. So we go into the next stitch, not the one we slip stitched into. Do one cluster in the next 4. So there's one in the next stitch, then one in the next stitch, then one in the next stitch, then one in the next stitch. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you should see you're reaching your previous 2 clusters. You can see you've got these increases here. So in the next one we do our 2 clusters. So there's one, and then go back into the same stitch and do another. Like so. But this time, because on the last row we did 1 cluster in the next 4, but this time we do 1 cluster in the next 5 now. So because here we did 1 cluster in the next 4, but we're counting our chain 1 as a cluster, so it's technically 5. So in between here we do 1 cluster in the next 5 stitches. So 1 cluster in the next 5, so 1 in the next stitch by itself. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you should see that takes you to your previous increase. So 1 cluster in the next 5, and that should take you to your previous increase, and then we do 2 clusters in that next stitch. So we have 1 and back into the same stitch and do another one. Okay. And then we just repeat that round, doing 1 cluster in the next 5, and then 2 clusters, 1 cluster in the next 5, 2 clusters, 1 cluster in the next 5, 2 clusters, then 1 cluster in the next 5, ending on 2 clusters. And you should have a stitch count of 42. 42, so 1 cluster in the next 5. Okay, it's just coming up to the last 6 stitches, so we do 1 cluster in the next 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, then that leaves us with 1 stitch, and we do 2 clusters in there. So on our increase rounds we always end with 2 clusters. There's 1, and go back to the same stitch to another, and then we just slip stitch in top of our 2 chain to join the rounds. So that's our first chain, there's our second. Make sure we're slip stitching into there, not off for a stitch. So I always catch those 2 bits of loop of yarn, and then there's one underneath, so I'm bringing it through something like so. So by the end of that round you should have a stitch count of 42. So now what we're going to do is we're going to work just normal rounds, length rounds as I call them, on hats. And we've done our increase rounds. And we're going to do rounds 8 to 16. So how many is that? 8 rounds, I think so. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yes, I still count on my fingers. That's going to be 9 rounds of just chain 2 and 1 cluster in each stitch round. So we're not doing any increases, not doing any 2 clusters. We're just going to do 1 cluster in every stitch, each stitch around. So we're keeping a stitch count of 42, and we're going to do that for 9 rounds, but you can do less rounds or more rounds depending on how baggy you want your beanie. I like a little bit of bagginess in the beanie, so a little bit of an oversized beanie, slouchy beanie. So I'm going to do 9 rounds of just chain 2 and then 1 cluster in each stitch around, and then slip stitching to join the round. Okay, so just chain 2 and go straight into that first stitch and do 1 cluster, and you want to do 1 cluster in each stitch around by itself, so no 2 clusters. Okay, so you've still got the stitch count of 42. So I'm going to do that for 9 rounds, and then I shall come back and show you what to do next. Okay. Okay, so I've just been working 1 cluster in each stitch around, and I've actually ran out of yarn. But this wasn't a complete ball of yarn anyway, I was just using it for the video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to totally mash this up with another colour. This is again the same thickness. This is a chunky bulky weight yarn as well. It's just in blue, but I thought I would stop here. I'm on my 8th round, so I need to do, I'm doing 9, but I'm on my 8th one, and I thought I would just show you how I would join another ball of yarn. Basically, obviously you would probably choose the same colour, not blue, but I don't have another ball of the green. So what I do is I leave a length about that much, and then what I do is I just put the 2 together. So I put the end of the green and the beginning of the blue together, and then I work my next stitch, whatever it might be. In this case it's going to be our clusters. So what I do is, because I'm yarning over, is I just wrap the blue around the yarn like that. So I'm technically working the 2 together, and then I go into the next stitch as normal and work the 2 yarns together. And it doesn't matter if that comes undone, you can just hold it into place and then just do your stitch as normal. And then we need to yarn over again, don't we, for our cluster. And you just keep working this until your green runs out, or your other ball of yarn runs out, and you're working with your new ball of yarn. And obviously this would all look the same if you're using the same colour, but now we're working with our new ball of yarn, and you don't have any knots or anything like that in the way. It's still nice and soft like all the other stitches. It does get slightly thicker, but if you make sure you don't leave too much of a tail end, not too short but not too long, then it'll only be thick for about 1 stitch, and it just keeps it nice and soft rather than having a knot. Alternatively, what you can do is you can just knot them together and work them, but then you're going to end up with a little knot in there which can leave a little lump. You can, of course, then if you do the knot loosely, you can untie the knot and then sew it in into your project and hide the tail ends. But that's how I join a new ball of yarn, to keep it nice and soft, and then you just carry on with your new ball of yarn. Obviously it would be in the same colour, but for the sake of this video I'm just going to be using this blue because it's the same thickness. And we shall ignore the craziness of the colour. Okay, so I'm just going to carry on doing my 9 rounds. I'm on my 8th one at the moment, so I'm just going to finish this one and do 1 more round, and then I shall come back and show you how to finish off the hat. Okay, so just 1 cluster in each stitch around. Okay, so I just got to the end of that round. I didn't have to do another round actually, that was actually my last round. So we've got this crazy change in colour happening, but obviously if you joined a new ball of yarn you would have it all the same colour. So now we're going to move on to round 17. So what you should have now is, when you were working the 1 cluster in each stitch around, you'd want to make sure that you're crocheting with the hat in this direction. So you're working in this direction, there's the inside like that, and you should have something that looks a little bit like this. So you've created the the length. So you've done all your increase rounds and then you created the length. And like I said, you can make this longer if you wanted to, or even slightly shorter if you want a more fitted beanie. This is kind of sort of in the middle. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to round 17, and this is just for finishing up the edge to get the sort of ribbing on the edge. So we're going to chain 2 like we have been before. So I've just slip stitched to join the round in the top of our chain 2. Then we're going to chain 2 and we're going to do 1 double crochet in the next stitch. So I'm going to do a double crochet this time, like so. And we're going to do 1 double crochet in each stitch around. So you're just going to do 1 double crochet in that next stitch, then 1 double crochet in each stitch around. So you've still got a stitch count of 42, but we're not going to join the round at the end. We're not going to slip stitch into the top of our 2 chain because we're going to do some ribbing instead. Okay, so just work 1 double crochet in each stitch around, and then I shall come back and show you what to do after that. Okay. Okay, so just coming up to the last stitch, 1 double crochet, and there we've reached the end, but we don't want to slip stitch into the top of our 2 chains, so don't join the round after round 17, but you should still have a stitch count of 42. And what we want to do now is we want to do a 1 double crochet front post stitch around the next double crochet post, but our next double crochet is technically our 2 chains. We're going to count these 2 chains as a double crochet. So we want to work a double crochet front post stitch around the next 2 chains. And to do that, we're going to yarn over and we're just going to put our hook behind it. So coming out the other side, we're just going to literally just pop it behind and then through that next gap. So we're just going to pop it behind there. Then you want to grab your yarn, wrap the yarn around and just bring that behind the 2 chains. So you've got your 3 loops as normal, and then you just do a double crochet as normal. So pull through 2, pull through 2, and that completes your first double crochet front post stitch, because you're basically working it around the 2 chains or the double crochet. That's all you do. Okay, and we want to do that around each double crochet as well. So for the next one, the proper double crochet, remember, yarn over and we just go behind it again. So this time we go in between that gap and out the next one, we just go behind it, just literally behind it. We're not going into any stitches at the top. And then making sure the yarn's at the back, bring the yarn round the back of that double crochet, and then we just do our double crochet as normal. Pull through 2, pull through 2, and then that works that double crochet around the previous double crochet. Okay, and that creates a double crochet front post stitch. So we do that for every double crochet around back to the beginning. So we go around the back of the next one, literally just through that gap, making sure yarn over and make sure the yarn's at the back like that, and then put your hook through that gap and out the next gap behind the double crochet. Wrap the yarn over and bring it round, and then you've got your 3 loops to do your double crochet as normal, and just repeat that round for each double crochet. Okay, so eventually you'll get back to the beginning, just doing the last one now. There we go. And all we want to do now is we want to move on to rounds 19 to 22. So that's 19, 20, 20, that's 4 rounds of just repeating the last round. So you want to do 4 rounds of 1 double crochet front post stitch around. So all you would do is you don't join the round or anything like that, you just want to work the next double crochet front post stitch. So to do that, you want to make sure you avoid all those stitches at the top. So you want to avoid all those and just put your hook behind the next double crochet that you worked, and you want to make sure you avoid the stitches this side. So you don't want to go through there or anything like that. You want to just literally go behind that double crochet that you did. And again, we just bring the yarn around the back and do our double crochet as normal, like so. And the same for the next one. You want to make sure you avoid these stitches at the top. You want to find the gaps below, so you can see the stitches from the previous row there and the stitches from the last row there. So in between those stitches there's a big gap, so you want to put it in there, round the back and out between the next big gap. So just literally behind that double crochet, making sure your yarn's at the back, just wrap it round and hook it behind, then do your double crochet as normal. And you want to repeat this for another 4 rounds, so that's 4 rounds. You can choose to do less or more if you want to, you might not want it too long. This is just for the ribbing at the end of the hat to make it have sort of a finish, nicer finish, more of a fitted finish as well. So, but with the written pattern it's 4 rounds, so rounds 19, 20, 21 and 22 of 1 double crochet front post stitch around each previous double crochet around. Okay, and don't join the rounds at the end. And just make sure you avoid those stitches there and these ones here, and you want to work in between these big gaps, just hooking it behind that double crochet. Okay, so I shall do that and then I shall come back and show you the finished hat. Okay, so when you get to the last 3, I'm just on the 4th to last one at the moment. There we go. So when you get to the last 3, and you can see the last 3 because there's your chain 2s and they follow up. So that's your last, well, that's your first stitch there. So when you get to the last few stitches, last 3 stitches, in fact the last 3 would actually be these 3, so there's our chain 2 one, that would have been our first, so 1, 2, 3, the last 3. What you want to do is just finish up with a few different stitches just to layer it down. So the 3rd to last one we do a double crochet front post stitch as normal, but in the next one I want you to do a half double crochet front post stitch, and to do that you do exactly the same. You yarn over and go around the back of your double crochet as normal, pull the yarn through, you've got your 3 loops, but then instead of doing a double crochet you just yarn over, pull through all 3. And then the very last one, this one here, we're going to do a single crochet front post stitch. So to do that we just go behind it as normal, but we don't yarn over, we just bring the yarn around the back, so we've got 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 just to do a single crochet. And then on the very first stitch of the round just go into the stitch as normal, so don't do a front post stitch, just go into the top stitch as normal and just do a little slip stitch, and that just finishes off the edging so it's level, because we weren't joining the round. It looks unlevel here because I changed colour, but these are clusters as normal. So, and there we go, there's our finished hat. I actually finished on row 21. I didn't go all the way up to row 22 because I felt that this was long enough. So you can choose how long you want to make your cuff at the end, or how short you want to make it. So there we go, there is our finished hat. See if I can get it on screen. Let's put it this side so you can avoid seeing the weird colour change. This is what it should look like. So we move the camera up, and there we go, should look a little something like this. Get it into focus. There we go, that's better focused. And there we go, so you've got all the cluster here, and like I said, you can make the length longer or shorter. I probably won't go much shorter than this, but that's your preference. And then we've got the front post stitch cuff at the end. So what I'm going to do now is to fit this onto our little mannequin. So let's put the camera down so you can see what I'm doing. Here she is. So we're just going to, I'm not going to cut the yarn, at the end because I'm going to undo this yarn. So, but you can of course cut it and then sew in, hide your tail ends as normal. So let's just put this on. And this mannequin head is actually slightly smaller than an average woman's head. It's probably more of the size of a teenager. So it might look a little bit big on her, if I can get it on. trying to see if it's in camera. There we go. So this is what it looks like on her. This is what it looked like on a teenager. But obviously it's a little bit big for her because her mannequin head's quite small. But there we go, there's the finished, there we go, there's the finished hat. So it's slightly oversized, so you can obviously make this shorter to have more of a fitted beanie, or you can make it even baggier if you want to, for an even more oversized beanie. And there we go. So I'm going to, over the top of this video, I will showcase a few of the hats when I did it properly in a single colour rather than two different colours in grey. So there you can see me, my lovely mug, wearing it. But I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. My batch is about to run out now, and this is to go alongside the Cluster Fingerless Mittens that I made in another video. You can watch this video as well on my channel. I'll put a link in the description to that as well. So these are some, if you haven't seen this, these are some little fingerless mitten gloves that use the same cluster design and ribbing effect, so they actually make a set, the two of them. So really cool gift to give to someone. So there we go. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Hope you managed to follow along, and I will see you soon for some more crochet fun. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.